Jackie Dean.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and it is my pleasure to speak to the Returning Offenders Management and Information Bill throughout the course of today. First of all, before I address the bill, a question was raised, quite rightly, that in the bill provisions around the reintegration of returning offenders who will be subject to conditions under this legislation are not noted in the bill, and as my colleague in front of me points out, no, it's not in the bill, and in fact isn't normally in the bill, but this government does have a very strong work program underway, traversing a number of relevant government agencies involved in offender rehabilitation, police, of course, corrections, immigration, the Customs Service, the Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Health and also Social Development. So those agencies are working together, have been for some time, to ensure that we are ready to support, monitor and begin the reintegration of these offenders upon their return to New Zealand. So it is this government's priority, in fact, to ensure that there are plans in place for these individuals who are being returned to New Zealand, who will be subject to the orders that are passed in this bill, with a focus on reintegration, but also to keep our communities safe. And that is entirely consistent and in line with a number of pieces of legislation that have fairly recently gone through this House, such as the orders mentioned by a previous speaker, the extended supervision orders, which, while captured, and this is perhaps a point around the context of this bill that I want to make, where this Parliament did put through extended supervision orders in around, came into being in December, and also public protection orders for those offenders who didn't commit their crime in New Zealand. But in the absence of an information sharing agreement, it was not possible at that time to extend parole conditions, supervision conditions, orders against offenders who committed their crimes outside of New Zealand. We simply weren't unable to craft up a regime for monitoring and rehabilitating offenders in the absence of an information sharing agreement. That was completed in February of this year, and here we are in November with the bill before the House. And while the gap between February and mid-November might seem a long period to traverse, in fact, an awful lot of work has been underway to put a system in order that will cater for those people who are increasingly being returned to New Zealand, many of whom are coming from Australia due to a change in their internal legislation with their immigration, with changes to their Migration Act. The register, which is being brought about by this legislation to track offenders and information sharing arrangements with Australia, will give us the detailed information that we need and puts the New Zealand government, corrections police and everyone else in a better position to properly assess and to monitor these offenders returning to New Zealand. We still need all criminals being returned to New Zealand to be subject to the same form of oversight as New Zealanders when they complete their term of imprisonment for a similar prison sentence. So this bill implements a supervision regime to cover the gap. There are three key aspects in this bill. The first aspect is to allow police to compel returning offenders to provide information. So that's their names, their dates of birth, their fingerprints, in some cases a DNA sample. Now, previously police could ask, but there was no degree of compulsion. Secondly, There will be standard monitoring and supervision conditions that are automatically imposed on all eligible returning offenders. So they are pretty standard and will apply to all eligible returning offenders. And thirdly, there will be new powers through the auspices of the District Court to impose special conditions, and those special conditions will be restrictions, for example, on not residing near a school or not residing near a daycare centre or something like that, which can also be orders can also be subject to electronic monitoring. Mr. Speaker, there will be further interventions today on this bill, and I will leave my contribution there. Thank you.